Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening for the Calvert County Zoning Ordinance Update Project. This is a public forum this evening. It'll be held both in person and virtually, so we have hopefully people on Zoom with us this evening as well. So we've done a couple of these now. We've started our ordinance project last spring with our first work session in April, and we gave an overview at that time of the zoning ordinance, our current zoning ordinance, the purpose of our zoning ordinance, strategies and goals for this update. The draft zoning ordinance was made available to the public in May of 2023, and we had our first public forum in June where we discussed the draft zoning districts as well as the draft zoning map. We also had public forums in August where we discussed the critical area, marine and water dependent facilities, and floodplain. That was followed with joint work sessions with the Planning Commission as well as the Board of County Commissioners in September and October. Through this process, planning and zoning staff has met with a number of representatives from organizations as well as individual citizens to discuss proposed changes to the zoning ordinance. We'll continue with these meetings with different groups and individuals throughout this process as requested. Questions and comments from the public can be submitted both via email or by regular mail. Staff are taking notes at these public forums where we've been generating frequently asked questions, which has been put up on our webpage. I'm sorry, and I'm not doing the slides like I'm supposed to be. There we go. This is our webpage, calvertcountymd.gov/zoning ordinance update. This is where you can access all of the information regarding the zoning ordinance update for the draft articles, the zoning map, as well as supplemental materials. The focus of this evening's public forum is Article 30, zoning approvals, variances, and appeals, Articles 32, nonconformities, and Article 33, enforcement. Public comment is currently open, and will be open for these three articles through November 3rd, which is next Friday. And now I'm going to hand it over to Will Hager, who is going to go over the articles.
Rachel, since this is such a small group, can we ask questions during it, or do you want us to wait until the end?
Yes, can we wait until the end, please? That would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you for that introduction, Rachel, and thank you for everyone joining us this evening in person and virtually. And so, moving forward, the slide we're on here, this gives a basic outline of the contents of Draft Article 30. And so, Draft Article 30 includes application procedure and approval processes for development plans, administrative variances, special exceptions, and decisions on alleged errors from the Board of Appeals, zoning map and text amendments. It addresses reconsideration and appeals of Board of Appeals decisions. It addresses reconsiderations and appeals of decisions by the Planning Commission Administrator and Planning Commission, and addresses zoning interpretations and verifications by the zoning officer. And so there are basically three types of development plans that are essentially categorized by the intensity and scale of the development. Category 1, site development plans. Category 2, site development plans, and plot plans. Category 1, site development plans. These include things like multifamily and single-family attached residential development, which is 3 units or more. Institutional, government, commercial, mixed use, and industrial development if cumulative square footage of any new construction is more than 7,500 square feet. The vehicular traffic within an existing development project will be altered if an automobile filling station or service station is proposed, or if the use has a drive-through service. Category 2 site plans include all of the other development that either doesn't require a Category 1 site plan or only requires plot plan review. And these include, but are not limited to, things like telecommunication facilities, parking lot modifications, and farm buildings and structures for commercial uses. And plot plan review is required for the least intensive types of development, which includes things like single-family homes and duplexes, residential accessory uses, home occupations, minor commercial remodeling without additions, minor commercial accessory uses, and farm buildings and structures not for commercial uses. And so the Planning Commission reviews and approves or denies site plans. However, the Planning Commission may delegate approval authority to the Planning Commission administrator for Category 1 site development plans with concept plans approved by the Planning Commission, or Category 2 site plans, both concept and detailed site development plans. However, if the Planning Commission delegates approval authority, the Planning Commission must review the decision of a Planning Commission administrator upon the request of any person aggrieved by the decision. And moving on to variances, the purpose of a variance is to afford relief from the strict application of the requirements of the zoning ordinance only when unwarranted hardship or practical difficulty exist. A variance may only be granted if peculiar and unusual practical difficulties or unwarranted hardships exist on the parcel, and such difficulties and hardships are created by exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of the parcel by reason of exceptional topographic conditions or any other extraordinary situations or conditions affecting the property. And unwarranted hardship means that without a variance, an applicant would be denied reasonable and significant use of the entire parcel or lot for which the variance is requested. And variances are permitted through a Board of Appeals hearing and approval process. However, the zoning officer has the authority to review and approve administrative variances for specific types of variance requests, including from sign height, setback, and parking requirements. However, if comments are received from any affected property owner in objection to the administrative variance, the variance request must be taken to the Board of Appeals. An affected property owner in this case would include all owners of all properties that abut the side or rear property line from which an administrative variance is sought, or in the case of an administrative variance request for a front setback adjustment, all owners of all properties that abut a side property line and those properties that lie directly across the street. And there are some limitations on the degree to which relief from regulations can be sought through an administrative variance request. For instance, setbacks may not be reduced by more than 50%, and in no case may the required setback be reduced to less than 5 feet, and parking requirements for non-residential uses may be reduced by no more than 15%. And for both types of variances, there are specific variance criteria that must be met in order for a variance to be granted, and it's the responsibility of the applicant or property owner to establish that this criteria has been met. So in regard to some of the proposed changes to the administrative variance section in the draft, the following provisions from the current zoning ordinance were not included in the draft zoning ordinance. So these are for sign height and parking variances meeting national corporate standards being considered an extraordinary situation for which an administrative variance may be granted. And for residential parking, the number of parking spaces being able to be reduced to a minimum of 1 space for single-family detached dwellings if there's an existing usable garage. And for variances from the Board of Appeals, the following provision was added to the draft zoning ordinance. Variances from lot area requirements that result in an increase of density shall not be granted. And the policies for expiration and revocation of approvals regarding special exceptions have been revised so that they also apply to administrative variances and variances from the Board of Appeals. Okay, we're back. So special exceptions, a special exception is the granting of a specific use that would not be appropriate generally or without restriction, and approval of a special exception is based upon finding that certain conditions as detailed in the ordinance are met, that the use conforms with the comprehensive plan and is compatible with the existing neighborhood. So think of a special exception as another layer of review that gives members of the community an opportunity to provide feedback to ensure that the proposed development is in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood. And sometimes after feedback from the community has been heard, the Board of Appeals will add conditions specific to the proposed development to ensure harmony exists. But in terms of proposed changes, no substantive changes have been proposed for this section of the zoning ordinance. So in regard to zoning map amendments, the following provision was added to the draft zoning ordinance. The following provision, any map amendments which result in an expansion of the RC rural commercial district shall not be permitted. And that was added to address the comprehensive plan action item to restrict the expansion of rural commercial uses and maintain a small scale rural character. And section 30-15 of this article was added to the draft, and that was added to make clear that the zoning officer has the authority to rescind approval of any permit if any conditions of approval are not met or if incorrect information was given by the applicant during the application process. So moving forward to Article 32, nonconformities. Any use, structure, site element, or sign that legally existed prior to the adoption of the zoning ordinance or any subsequent amendments may continue subject to the provisions of Article 32 so long as it remains otherwise legal. It establishes policies in regard to expansion, change of use, discontinuation and abandonment, damage and destruction, and structural alterations of nonconforming uses and structures.
Can you go back 2 slides real quick?
Go back 1 page.
That one. And did you have a question about that?
Yeah, I do, but we can wait.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks.
So back to nonconformities. In terms of proposed revisions to this article, in regard to nonconforming uses, the current policy is that a nonconforming use may, with the approval of the Board of Appeals, be changed to any other nonconforming use which the Board of Appeals finds to be of the same or more appropriate use or classification. And in the draft, this policy has been proposed to be changed so that a nonconforming use can only be changed to a use allowed within the zoning district where it is located. So that use would have to be an allowed use according to the current adopted use table in order to that use to be changed. And the current policy is that a non-conforming use which has been discontinued or abandoned for 9 consecutive months or for 18 months during a 3-year period cannot again be used for a non-conforming use, except that a non-conforming seasonal use shall be permitted to continue unless discontinued or abandoned for a period of 24 consecutive months. And so the draft, in the draft zoning ordinance, this has been revised so that if a non-conforming use or seasonal non-conforming use is discontinued or abandoned for 12 consecutive months, the non-conforming use is terminated. This time period may be extended by the zoning officer for additional 6 months upon written request by the property owner. Section 32-3C was added to this draft article. This section establishes that structural alterations are permitted only when the alteration is required by law or is necessary to restore the structure to a safe condition upon the order of any official charged with protecting public safety, when the alteration will eliminate the nonconformity, or when the alteration will not create a new nonconformity or increase the degree of any existing nonconformity. So for an example, if a structure is nonconforming in terms of the required front setback, the structure may add a rear addition if it meets all other dimensional requirements of the district. And section 32-4 was added to the draft zoning ordinance. This section establishes that all nonconforming site elements must be brought into conformance when a new principal building is constructed on the site or an existing principal building increases its footprint. When a parking lot does not conform to required parking lot landscape requirements, it must be brought into conformance when the parking lot is fully reconstructed or expanded. However, if this would result in the creation of a parking area that no longer conforms with the minimum parking requirements of the ordinance, existing parking lots are not required to install all or portion of the required landscape. And when any exterior lighting is replaced, all exterior lighting on the site must be brought into conformance with the current regulations. And so Article 33, enforcement. This article defines zoning violations. It addresses policies and processes for citations, fines, referral to district court, repeat violations, and impacts to other permit applications on the same property. And revisions were made to this article to clarify existing policies, streamline processes, and to reduce redundancies. And Section 1-701J, time limits for enforcement actions from the current zoning ordinance, was not included in the draft zoning ordinance following legal review. So in summary, Article 30, revisions to the types of variance requests for parking lot and sign height that can be permitted through an administrative variance process. Variances from lot area requirements that result in an increase of density shall not be granted. Article 32, revised so a non-conforming use can only be changed to a use allowed within the zoning district. Revised and simplified the policy for when non-conforming use is considered abandoned, and revised to address non-conforming site elements such as parking, landscape, and lighting. And Article 33, revisions done to clarify existing policies, streamline processes, and to reduce redundancies. So I believe that wraps up the presentation. And so with us here tonight, we've got staff towards the back of the room here that are ready to listen and take any questions that anyone here tonight might have. Chris Breedlove, the gentleman to my far left here, he's the head of our zoning enforcement department or division. So if you have any enforcement related questions, he's your go-to guy. And I guess that's all I have to say.
So we would like to conclude this portion of the public forum and move on to the second portion, which will be questions and comments. So we'd like to break you guys up since we have 2 tables for who here. So I think we have 8, so we'll do 4 and 4. The table to my left in the back will be situated with a camera to allow the people on Zoom to also be included in that portion. So if you don't mind being on camera and being part of the recording that will be posted on our website, you can go to that table, and if you would like not, then you can go to the table on the right. And just for everybody's information, the PowerPoint as well as our comparison document that compares the draft and the changes to our current zoning ordinance, both of those documents are included on our website so that you can go and review them at any time, as well as the recording from all of our public forums are uploaded there as well if you'd like to go back and look at ones that you haven't seen or this one, just for your information. So if everybody wants to get up and break out to your tables, then we can have a discussion and answer your questions.
we are trying a little different format this time, so that we can include some of the conversations from within the room. If you would like to listen to the conversations there first, and then maybe develop your own questions, we may do that. If you'd rather do it this way, and ask questions of your own, try that as well. So whichever, if you have any questions,
Here, sir, you can sit right here.
couple of you here online.
I'm Jennifer.
Questions, concerns, comments with the 3 chapters that we are here to discuss this evening. If not, then you are welcome to listen to any conversations that
I think this was the right table. And of course, you are welcome to submit information or questions or comments on these articles by email, or you may do so in writing and mailed to the Attention to Zoning Ordinance Update, 205 Main Street, Prince Frederick, Maryland, 20678.
And we have no control over any of it. But because it's already zoned as commercial or as residential, we need to find out what
We do have staff online to answer any questions you may have that relate to these articles and the updates to the zoning ordinance.
short-term rentals.
If you think of something as we sit here, please raise your hand. Meanwhile, we'll look into the background conversations of the room at the area brown.
Yes, they do, yeah, yes, they're incorporated now, oh my God, they're incorporated there, right?
Chesapeake Beach and North Beach. Something like that.
So just in the.
And they have.
That's more of a
And that's why we want to see, because we're redoing some of the regulations, where does this
So it is in our draft, and it'll tell you based on this square footage, you might be.
I mean, is the county concerned about it? Has it come up before, or
So
where is the county right now on it? Just out of curiosity.
We haven't really taken a stance on it.
No?
We get concerned citizens in the neighborhood as well as a lot of people that want it as well. So we hear both sides.
So just in the last, just in a, there's maybe not even a 10-mile area, just in the last 2 years, there has been over 50 open spaces.
There was one last year, there was one or two, now there's like 10 or 11. Right, just
Just
in our
in our
neighborhood.
neighborhood, 200 houses.
So some of us live right, like myself, live right next door to one, and it's basically, I know it's a, free market society and everything, we live in a capitalist society, but, and the thing is a cash cow, the guy has been out nonstop, every single one, but it's just random people.
You never know who's, we've got kids.
Oh, yeah, they have big parties, parties, cars.
So what, I mean, what would you guys like to see in the draft of short-term rentals? I mean, cause it's gonna be difficult for us to say, okay, we can have it in this.
That'll work.
But this neighborhood, but not this neighborhood, right, that's where we're kind of like, where we draw that line. So if you guys have any suggestions, we'd love to hear.
So a lot of communities across the different states, say, if you own, you can reduce a portion of that.
But just not the whole house, because then it creates a one half of house.
And then it also, takes up housing.
You don't want to be reducing the size of those parking spaces, the way the trucks are,
Get a house.
the way that the size of the trucks, the trajectory that their things are on.
So people in their 20s and 30s aren't
It's a good
gonna
power
see
to it.
that
Okay.
are
Yeah, I think it died anyway, but.
Okay.
Knew that was gonna happen.
You
called it.
Snaps it up and it immediately it's.
I don't know if the battery's just fried, or, I mean, I'm sure just, plugging in the monitors and stuff like that doesn't, help them
questions.
There's gonna,
Questions.
that would also,
This
you know, affect
topic on
the
short-term
overall
rentals
size
is
of the
part
parking.
when we discuss Article 18, uses are. So that would be the time to have this
Yeah, and you're gonna have to pay
discussion.
more.
Your whole formula would change.
I think
Yeah, you have to pay more area if you increase the size.
the date on when we're discussing that.
But yeah, it is,
So,
everyone has to deal with parking.
All of us can't
So Article 18,
And the other
Article
thing
4,
is,
Article
you
18 is
talked about
January, right now it is January
multifamily.
18.
Okay, what are you referring
Comments,
to?
the comment
Multifamily,
period
that's,
for those articles is from January
No,
to
so
26.
a townhouse is a townhouse, multifamily, that's more of an apartment, condos.
So aside from
Duplex, no.
short-term rentals, do you guys have
So essentially,
concerns
if
on the
it's
articles
a
that we
single
discussed?
structure and there are two, it's three triplets, four
basically, the
quadruplets.
density is
If it's
what,
five or
you know,
more,
we were looking for the facts and everything else.
So are you talking,
The
you say
density
multifamily,
is increasing
you said,
in our
I
specific
thought you said single
because of
family,
Airbnbs. Like I said, we now have more people
single
living there
family
who don't live
attached.
there, which
Is
is
that
an
gonna be
impact
multi,
on how
is
that.
that gonna be?
Well,
So
goes
the
against
density,
density.
the density hasn't
it,
increased.
it just depends on the number.
I mean, the number
It-
of houses.
Yeah,
So like a single
number
family
of lots.
attached,
The
So,
number-
but
the
what
number
you're
of
talking
lots.
about
Two
is the number
dwelling
of people
units,
living
that's a
in each
duplex.
household,
Right.
which
three, that's
We
triplets,
can't
four, that's quadruplets. If it's
aside
five or
from-
more,
So
then you start
with
getting
our
to
zoning
your
right
more
now, it
apartment,
says that it's single family
condo type
homes.
of developments. And
So if you're
that's
renting a business.
Okay, so multifamily has to have a footprint of 7,500 square feet?
No, that was,
Or did I write it down?
no, that was,
Right. But what we were talking about was levels of what type of plan you need to submit to the county to be reviewed, based on the unit type. So single family is a plot plan,
so what you were,
multifamily is a site plan.
what you were, what you were looking at was the next bullet, which was more commercial, institutional, governmental types of development. If it falls below that 7,500 square foot threshold, then that would be bumped down to a category 2 site plan. If it's more than 7,500 square feet, that would be a category 1 site plan, and that has, the planning commission, I think, is more involved, especially in the concept level of those type of things.
It's a bigger space.
It's more intense, a larger scale development.
And you've got administrative variances for sign height, right? That's all commercial, or is that like an apartment, or would that be like Rodney's Magnolia Gardens?
That has a sign, yeah.
Yeah, right, would that be, we would be talking all signs, not just a business sign, a community sign, a subdivision sign, correct?
Yes, I believe, yeah, it's all
All
signs.
signs.
Okay, so that's all signs, gotcha. Alright. And does residential have different regulations than, say, commercial? Do you think that's gonna happen?
In terms of signs.
Yes, signage. Let me just tell you what happened a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. The builders, they wanted flashing signs on Route 4, but they also wanted inside the stores. You could cover up your whole window. You had no window. Remember that? Yes. And so that was gonna happen. So how are we going to address that in commercial? I mean, you're just gonna do an outdoor sign, you know, they wanted every bit of their space. It's Anthony Williams who did it, you weren't here then, I don't think, but at any rate, every bit of their window area, say TJ Maxx or Marshall's or one of the larger stores, every bit of that window could be covered up with signage.
What's our sign, the sign regulations?
Sign, I
We're
believe
not,
it's-
we're
I
not
believe it's
on the sign
29,
regulations
yeah.
yet, but the signage that you can have is based on the square footage of your
Development,
right.
okay.
And we went, when we did our last sign update, which was not too long ago, we had to do it because of the federal.
It's 2016.
The
2016 update, got it.
Was it the sheriff's office who was against
Covering
covering all of
Yes,
this?
and it was actually the
because of-
liquor stores driving
Yeah,
that,
right.
like
Yes,
last week.
right,
I
exactly.
don't know why they think that's gonna make somebody buy beer, but you're correct, that was a concern. And their concern was if they're riding past a store
And
and
somebody's in
and
there
can't see
getting
on the
raped.
inside, right,
Right,
something
right,
would be
something
happening
dangerous
and they
could be
can't
happening.
see in,
Right.
so that
Yeah.
we still do it based on the square footage of the,
Front building.
Front building, yes.
Right.
So what
And
percentage
we do-
can be covered
it depends
of
on
the front glass?
I don't have the signed ordinance with me now, but it's, I don't recall right like right now.
But he has, she has to just
Yeah, let me find out.
And revocation of a permit, okay, let me just, I just wanna double check with you, so I don't have to come down and sit, and you have to put me on the computer, although I'm like, I want to, you know, gives me something fun to do. So if you revoke a permit, okay, and the developer builder has a permit on a piece of property and it's sat abandoned for
Yes, Randy, I see
a
your
time
hand.
frame, can they still file for an extension on their site plan?
A building permit.
I'm talking about for subdivision.
So site plan, subdivisions, and
Right.
permits all have their own
Right.
criteria
I could hear you
for
asking about signs, but I
Now,
didn't
have you changed those yet? Have you adopted, have you adopted something new?
We're going to, right now, it just says you request an extension.
Right.
And we all feel like there should be criteria.
If they could
It's
even
not
get
just because you didn't have time to work on the plan.
And
Okay,
it
now let me
sounds
just
to me
share
like
this
you've
with you.
got
I'm just gonna
it,
share it. One of the county employees told me
which would be
that
wonderful.
one of the commissioners stated to me that Rodney got his extension and he hadn't finished his paper. He had not done all his work on his, on Magnolia. And, you know, that it was carte blanche.
I will have to get back to you on that. So if you would like to either give me a call tomorrow morning and I'll have an answer for you. If I could get a hold of, Judy, she's probably, Judy will
There's a couple
probably
of
two people that
intersections now
know it to that.
that are under review by the
So
council.
I will be
And is that
happy to
Magnolia again?
answer that
They're
question.
coming up again for an extension?
All right, thank you.
I'll tell you, Randy, signs are not my favorite strong,
Okay.
not my favorite topic or
Just,
strong point.
right.
They are.
And so they're going over to John Morris.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
I'm trying, cause I know the one in this week, and then I'm pretty sure it was
That sounds like it'd be a good change, because the current system, you just extend.
It's limited, you're allowed one
1 year?
one-year extension.
Right.
And
One
it
hundred.
is
That's it.
either on your concept or on your final plan, but not both. So,
Right, and he got it on his conceptual plan.
But the change is now you have to have meet certain criteria to get that extension, whereas now,
We're
you just ask for
working
it.
on what that criteria is, we don't have it in, but there will be some criteria.
Let me just share this with you. Okay, I'm just sharing it with you so you know what goes on behind the scenes in this massive development. Not just here, I'm talking about the state and US law. And your dad would understand. What ends up happening is that a lot of the builders are gonna flip their properties. They're gonna flip their land. They're gonna get to the point where you've given them everything they need, and then they flip it. And how do I know this? Because Rodney's engineer told me. He said, we're talking with Envy Homes and Ryland to see how they do this. What they were doing is, what do you need for us to ask for down in our county for you to come and take this property over? And that's the problem that the citizens are gonna have, because they don't mind dealing with a local developer, builder who's got a reputation. But they don't like having to have somebody come in and build a house, doesn't know them, and then walks off the job. You can't get a hold of them for punch outs or anything like that. So that's, when you're doing this, Will, when you're doing this, you have to remember that the whole transaction is for flipping these properties, especially if your developer is a single-family developer. They told me, Carolyn told me that nobody's asking for commercial property. That's because we don't have a commercial developer or builder in the county. We only have residential. And that's why that's happening. So, you know, you just need to make sure that if you give these grants and this time element, that you're dealing with the same person, because these big time, developers, builders, they'll come in and walk right over top of you and you just want them gone, because they cause a lot of problems for you.
It's also my understanding, that the builders that have been here for
Years.
a long time,
Yes,
right?
years.
So
Right.
it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense that they wouldn't understand how to be able to construct the
They don't.
permitting process and so on. So why, I guess alluding to that, it would only logically make sense that there's something going on. I mean,
Well, they
a
build.
permit is a permit.
Right.
You've been doing it for 30 years, you should know how to pull a permit.
Right, and what's needed, but here's the thing of it is, it's time because of the money they've got invested in it. Rodney probably has a letter of intent that Johnny got, and he's gonna perfect it when everything comes together. First of all, the interest rates are high, the people they're paying 8% interest now on a home. Rodney has other costs involved in everything, so he's not really ready to develop that home. He's not ready for it, and neither is his takeout builder ready. They're not ready, they've gotta have everything in place. And they don't with you all. You all
Well,
have
then
not.
they'll take a chance of their site plan expiring and they have to send it back through the process.
I know, and that night, Linda Vasala went right back in here and talked to Mark Willis, and that's when they acknowledged, when Rodney got that extension, that was Linda Vasala telling Rodney, telling Mark to tell Lisa Williams, who was on the speaker, screaming at everybody. That was him saying, well, you just have to pay for all the work all over again, that's not fair to do to a developer builder, is they have to pay again to go through the whole process. So see, there's a lot of things that go on that they can manipulate the system, not you individually, the system. And that's, I just wanna share that, because that's what happens. What?
I didn't mean to start. So, when we were listening to the presentation on Magnolia, and they were saying that the streets can't be turned over to the county, so that means the HOA, excuse me, yes. The HOA is gonna take care of that, they're gonna have a pumping station, the HOA will be in charge of that. They're gonna have these retaining walls that
May not work.
Right. The HOA will be responsible for those. So at what point, and they have a recreation building that will need upkeep and maintenance, and I think there's a pool with that too. And children's, a tot lot, yes. So at what point do the people, the prospective buyers get to find out all of this that they're gonna have to end up paying for?
Well, here's the thing, I'll just answer that basic question, but let me just prefatory say, that's one of the reasons why the builders are not building this right now. You can't lay off all the overhead costs for 20 years, somebody live in a house for 20 years and every 3, they won't even get snow removal.
That's when we were discussing critical
Because that's
areas.
county does the snow removal. And that's why he said he talked to people. He took the mic over from his engineer and said he's talked to people about this, and this is the way they're developing new construction. Not in Calvert County they don't. They may develop that try to develop it up in Montgomery or some other place, but they don't do that down here. So what ends up happening is that there's gonna be lawsuits and everything. However, the real estate agent is the one that has to give the covenants, restrictions, and covenants. They hand it over, can be 100 pages, can look like your notebook. They hand that over. Do you think that the way that legalese, that the owner, the purchaser understands any of that? No, they don't. They understand nothing. It's made that way. It's developed that way. All you have to do is say, yes, I received my covenants. They go to settlement, and the settlement attorney, or the settlement office, or the agent, whatever, the settlement people, they don't even understand that document. They just say it is a matter of record, it's in live folio, and we have a title insurance policy on guaranteeing it. So nobody's ever really sat down and explained it to them. And that's when the rubber meets the road, because, oh gee, we all got $1,000, we have to plow our own, you know, the snow, we've got to do, and when, let me just say this, here's the other thing. I heard Rodney, I've known Rodney since he was 14, and his whole family. So when Rodney was saying that what they were gonna do is they will put in the road. They're not gonna do a road that's turned over to the county. They're gonna do base code on that road. That's all they have to do is the base code.
There is a standard for non-county roads.
Oh, okay, all right,
Public
so you
works.
have some standard there, right,
It's
okay.
not a county road standard, but there is.
Okay, I'd like to see that, I'd like to see, so not gravel, but a base coat, you know, the first layer of coat. So, at any rate, those are the things that are gonna become a problem. I see those.
It's a long lot, it's about a 300 lot.
You know, or
It's a long
whatever,
lot, so
whatever the back,
I said, well,
the backdrop
I
is.
put driveway in, and
The
Public Works said, well,
subdivision.
you have to count,
Or whatever.
I think it's
But I
15
think there's
feet
some
wide
things that we
to
can
compute
put in our
impervious
zoning
surface.
ordinance, but there's some
So
things
it's
that
200
we're
feet to
not
the
gonna
house,
be
so
able
right
to
away,
control. Like, we're not gonna be able to control whether the homeowners association is managing with
Right.
one
Yeah,
side of
except
the
for-
back, 2,000.
so that's 3,000 square feet. It's right off the bat.
Right, yeah, so includes just a kind of driveway.
Yeah.
So what you can do.
And you can't argue, you can say, well, I'll keep it real small.
Yes, and critical
So-
areas,
And that's what we're
the
trying to
requirements
correct.
for critical
That's
area
what we're
are much
trying to
stringent than the rest of the
Well,
counties.
yeah,
We are
I know.
There's only
But,
But
and
some
those,
that we're
do
trying
wanna
to
say that those aren't
train
carried down from the state.
Yeah.
Those are not county regulations, those
However,
are state
however, it
regulations.
says that the county can, give you a variance, they have the authority to give you a variance.
Not in most cases. There are only a few things that we're allowed to do
In
variances
the
for.
impervious surface, they are allowed to give you a variance.
We're very limited in the variances that we're
Well,
allowed
it's
to
in
do.
there. And, but anyway, so I went back to Ron and said, okay, so what do I do? And he said, well, why don't you put a garage up by the road and then get a golf cart and run.
So it's already been extended, would there be another extension?
Oh, so is that
So that's
portion?
that's the county's position?
Well, no, I think what Ron is trying to do, sir, is give you alternatives so that you can still do what you wanna do, but that will still meet the regulations.
Yeah, well, I'd like to be able to drive up to my house.
Right, no, I understand.
And I'd
You know,
like to have
we
a-
always try to, when
Yeah, but they said,
things
I'm-
aren't working
Details
out.
and
I'm
try
not
to
here
go,
to solve
so
the
they
problem.
submitted a
It actually solved a lot in
development
May when
plan
it came
for
out to
white space,
an amendment
but not the other.
to the variance,
So that's been
or
our
to
question.
the
Right.
So
impervious
you
surface
submitted
rules.
this phase into
And this blanket said,
Not the
if
second.
half an
Right,
acre
because
is
they
gonna
have
hold,
them
I
take
think,
out.
545
And so the
square
question
feet
was,
until it's 15%, and then it will start going up to
deadline is to
15%.
get your concept plan, they got
Total
an
lot
extension.
area.
The
That
deadline
should,
is to get
that solved a lot of it.
The
But
details.
he didn't even know it
Right,
was out.
and
Right.
then you have another
So-
Well, I will have to touch base with
detail
him.
segment.
And see
Don't.
what happens.
We were questioning, because
Don't make it any worse.
Things don't get passed around, so.
Well, the one that,
Ron,
the-
right here, because they didn't.
No.
the person.
These are critical area.
Sorry, I called you. I'm probably
But the person that-
one is
That makes it
continuing,
challenging.
yeah,
That
makes
makes
it
it
challenging.
But the person that kinda cleaned it up was Robin. And,
Yes, Robin has
Yes,
worked for us
so-
for a long time.
so she has a critical area checklist.
When it goes to
New
When
plan.
you're doing a project. And on the back of it, you flip it over and now it says that the change in May, it holds at 445 feet.
It went through the,
I think.
the old.
It's what the number is when the lot gets up to half an acre. Before it would drop off to like 2,500 feet, half an acre. Then if you got a long lot, you'll never see your house again. But anyway,
No, but
the
you
issues
still
are,
have to have
yeah,
Yes, yes.
But it's just that we're gonna start
Yeah,
Now,
I
when I
don't know,
talked to,
other than,
JR,
he kept saying, you can get a variance.
Really,
I want to prove it, and the state probably won't prove it.
when
But
I
then
talked to him,
they
they said that Rodney
redefined it.
did not want to have to bear the cost of interruption. They were trying to.
Okay, pardon the interruption. Excuse me. We're going to wrap up the Zoom, the virtual portion of tonight's, this evening's forum. Thank you, anyone. Well, I'm not sure if there's anyone left watching virtually, but in case you are, thank you for joining us. And anyone who's with us in person, you're free to continue the conversation. And but I believe that's a wrap for those tuning in virtually, and thank you.